Hey everybody, welcome back to my channel. I'm glad you could join me today. This is my spoiler-filled review for Rhythm of War by Sanderson, fourth book in the Stormlight Archive. If you have not read this book, turn away now. Go to my description below and find the link to my spoiler-free video. It'll be in the description, so I will give you a second to go do that. And I'll just wait patiently. Do 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 do. Still here? All right. So let's get right down to it. Oh my goodness. Rhythm of War. I read it in 2 weeks. I attempted to read it quicker than that, but it just didn't happen. So that's okay though. It was a really good book, and I have thoroughly enjoyed it. So let's talk spoilers. Let's talk the nitty-gritty stuff. Starting with some of the highlights of my favorite moments. Okay? And please interact with me in the comments. Let me know what you thought. Let me know if there's things I missed, things that you liked. Maybe you didn't like the same things that I liked. Who knows? You know, we're all different. Let me know in the comments. So let's start with one of my favorite things, character-wise, that happened in the book. And that was when Kaladin swore the fourth ideal. Finally, I was hoping that he would do it at the end of book 3. He came this close in Oathbringer to swearing the fourth ideal, and it just didn't happen. And I was like, oh, really? You were so close. But, you know, you got to give it time, right? You got to be patient. And even though I'm a huge fan, I was on the edge of my seat. I'm like, come on, say it. Say the words. He didn't, and that's okay. But he did in this book, and I was so thrilled. I almost wondered if he wasn't going to, because with everything that happened to him in this book, and he was in such a funk for such a large chunk of the book with everything that was happening. They came back from the first battle, and Kaladin was, you know, really worn out, and he hadn't been sleeping and everything, and Dalinar relieves him of duty. And that was a huge blow to Kaladin right there, mainly to his ego, right? You know, he wanted to be part of leadership. He wanted to be with his team. He wanted to keep doing what he was doing. And then I'm sure it felt to him like now his commanding officer doesn't have faith in him. And no matter how much Dalinar tried to reassure him that it was for his own good, deep down a part of him was just absolutely crushed. And at first I was like, Dalinar, no, you can't do that. Kaladin's our boy. And then I realized, you know, he's got some really severe PTSD going on. And he needs some time to rest and learn to cope. So it made sense. And then he had to deal with the relationship with his dad. And, you know, first he was going to be a surgeon. And then when it came right down to it, he had to kill, and you know, it was just part of who he was. He was a protector, and he had to make sure that he was protecting everybody in his own way, and his dad didn't understand, and that was another blow. And then with the tower under the control of the fused, his powers were limited, and so that was another huge obstacle, just one thing after another. And he had to fight this crazy fused who just wouldn't die, and at every turn this guy was hunting him down. So just time after time he was getting beat down, and yet he kept persevering, and he pulled himself out of it with Syl's help and a bunch of other people's help. Dalinar as well, when he was flying to the tower in the storm. He even came to Kaladin's aid, and with all that combined, he finally swore the fourth ideal. I was so excited. Oh man, that made my day. Something else that was really cool was with Navani becoming a bondsmith for the sibling of the tower. I thought that was really amazing, and it was something I did not see coming, because the whole time the sibling kept talking about how they didn't trust humans, and they didn't trust Navani because she was working to create more fabrials and imprison more Spren, and you know he just didn't want her to keep doing that, and she kept working towards that goal, and the sibling just hated that and just looks down on humans, and but he kind of liked Relaine, and I thought it was actually going to be Relaine because even from the beginning of the book, we had found out how Kaladin really wanted to get Relaine bonded with a Spran, and it just wasn't happening. It wasn't the right timing, and he didn't want it to be forced. And so I thought, well, this is the perfect match, and the sibling really likes Relaine, or has grown to like him throughout the book. And then when it became Navani, I was like, whoa, that I did not see that coming. It made sense, though. It made sense, because when it got right down to the last minute, they didn't really have a choice but for the sibling to bond with her, even though the sibling fought against it. I thought sure they were still going to stretch it out long enough for Relaine to arrive on the scene and be bonded with the Tower's Bran. But it didn't happen. And I'm actually really happy about that. It's kind of interesting having two bondsmiths that are married, right? It's just kind of a cool thing. So, and speaking of bonding with the sibling, I thought it was really interesting how all of Navani's work through the major chunk of the book was working towards the scientific discovery that she would need to be able to effectively bond the sibling and reverse the effects of odium's light that Raboniel had fused into the tower. So it just worked out so perfectly, and that was another thing that really surprised me. All the time that Raboniel was working with Navani and trying to create these tests and figure out how to make Voidlight and Stormlight work together and things of that nature, I thought sure that Raboniel was kind of coming around and wanting to make peace and things like that, but she was really clever and cunning and deceptive. She really pulled off that deception well, and there were a few things that I don't think she was making up. I mean, having to kill her daughter, that had to be a crushing blow for her. But overall, she was really good at the game of deception, and all she really wanted Navani's discoveries for was to figure out a way to end the war in their favor and eliminate the Radiants. So that was really unfortunate. I was kind of bummed by that, but I wasn't surprised either. Although it was kind of a nice turnaround at the end when she realized that she was done for, and if somebody, and if there was to be an end to the war, she at least wanted Navani to have it if she wasn't able to. She wanted the conflict to end somehow, and she ended up, hindering Moash while Navani did what she needed to do and bond the Spren from the tower. So that whole thing was really, really cool, I thought. And so I'll come back to Moash in a minute, because that's a whole different topic that I want to touch on, and I've got a different section of the video for that. Let's finish talking about the highlights of the book for me. Another one was Shallan and Adolin and their journey into Shadesmar. I was really impressed with how detailed and intricate that whole journey was. I will say that if there was one downside to it, they spent way too much time on the barge. If you ask me, I'm just like it's like I know they were supposed to be on there for days, but did it have to really feel like that many days? I by the end of it, I was like, oh God, finally we're off the barge and we can move on with the story. There were a few little interesting tidbits that happened while they were on the barge. You know, the mystery was trying to figure out who the spy was, and interviewing and trying to deceive the ones that she thought was the spy. But overall, I mean, that didn't that didn't help how slowly it dragged. And so I could have done without that. But all in all, everything was really interesting about that section and some huge wins. Number one, it might not seem like a win, but it kind of was. She finally figured out that Pattern was actually the spy, and he's the one that had been talking to Maraise, the leader of the Ghost Bloods, or one of the leaders of the Ghost Bloods. He's not the leader, of course. And just the mistrust that she had for Pattern at that point, and she just felt totally betrayed by Pattern. And I thought that was going to really drive a wedge between them and really dampen her powers, but it actually ended up working out good because then Pattern was able to finally talk to her and try and explain why it happened. But for some reason, Pattern didn't want to tell her about what really happened in her past. It's like he wanted her to still figure it out for herself or for themselves. It was really, that was another thing that was really cool to see how well she had adapted to working together with Radiant and Veil and in dealing with her dissociative identity disorder. And I was really impressed with how intricately detailed that whole thing was. Brandon Sanderson obviously did his homework into mental illnesses such as that, and he made it very believable, and it felt very realistic for what was happening with Shalon and her different personalities and how they kind of played to one another's strengths, and but deep down she was still bearing all those things from her past that she was afraid to tell people, and some things that she didn't even know herself until it came right down to the end. So I thought that was very well done. And as far as Shalon goes, the climax of everything, of course, was when Formless took over, or what Shalon was trying to pass off as Formless, but it was really her. And then Radiant and Veil see through it, and they're like, no, you're Shalon, and it's time for you to deal with this and come to grips with who you really are. It's time for us to unify. And that was another thing that kind of bothered me, how quickly it all happened, how quickly she reunified. And that's not really realistic, I don't think, with dissociative identity disorders. It's so much more complex than that. But for the story, I know he kind of had to close out that portion of the story, so I don't know if we're going to see her personalities split up again in future books, or if that's just the end of her mental illness and now she's moving on in her power and strength, and she's going to be of one single mind. If that's the case, it's just not realistic. Not that I want her to be dealing with that. I mean, I'm sure it's excruciating and emotionally taxing for her to balance the three, but at the same time, it's not totally believable that it would happen that quickly and that efficiently. So I guess we'll see what happens with that. but I was really glad that she finally came to terms with everything. And it sounds like she came clean to Adolin, although they didn't really say anything specific, but apparently she's told all of her past to Adolin, from what I gathered. And especially the revelation that she had another Spren, and that was the Deadeye that Adolin met in the marketplace. And that was really, really unfortunate, and I felt horrible for Shallan because it was obviously the weight of, killing her father and things like that, and dealing with these things that she didn't understand that made her reject her Spren the first time. And not that that makes it right, it just makes it understandable. And you really, at least I really felt for Shallan during that moment. And, who knows, maybe at some point she will be able to communicate with her Deadeye the way that Adolin does with his. And so that's kind of all my thoughts to share on Shallan. I thought it was really cool moving over to Adolin and Maya, that when he went to trial for the quote-unquote sins of the human race against the Spren, and we finally heard Maya speak. After all the torturing they had done to her in the courtroom, she finally spoke up, and she said, and this floored me, because I did not see this coming. I had no idea. She said, "We chose." And so apparently the Radiance Spren chose to forsake their oaths and their bonds along with them. And all this time, the Radiants had been blamed for destroying their Spren when it was a joint decision. So that was kind of interesting to find out that revelation. I thought that was really a really good piece of information to have, and for everything to resolve and kind of move forward. There will probably be a lot of bitterness among a lot of the Spren of Shadesmar still, a lot of the High Spren, and a lot of them still may be reluctant to bond humans, but at least this opens the door, and I think there will be more bonding of humans as time goes by. So be excited to see what happens with that in Book 5. Let's move on to Dalinar really quickly, and that's where I'm going to transition to some WTF moments, okay? So I'll briefly talk about Dalinar, because he was just very briefly in the book as it was. I mean, he didn't have a whole lot of time in the book, with the exception of a few chapters. So he was mainly a side character, it seemed like, because he was the one that opened the perpendicular to let in Stormlight to recharge the Radiance, and just to supply that constant flow of Stormlight so that they could do what they needed to do, and to rescue the people from the village in the beginning, and then at different points during the book to resupply the Radiance with Stormlight. So he was kind of just a side character, with the exception of a few scenes where he was in conferences with the different Bright Lords and the different generals, and trying to make sense of what the best approach is for going into battle and what direction they should go. And then right at the end, I was not expecting him to actually try and form a pact with Odium, but it made sense in a way that he's trying to do his best to protect Rashar and to come to some sort of agreement whereby he can possibly defeat Odium, and then Odium leaves Rashar. But there's still the chance that he won't. And I wonder what's going to happen with that now that he is offering himself up as the champion, and we don't know who Odium is going to choose yet for his champion. And I'm assuming that battle will take place in Book 5. The battle for the livelihood of Rashar, and we'll see if Dalinar wins or if Odium wins. I'm very curious to see that. And it's also further complicated by the fact that now he has to go and get more training to use his bondsmith powers from this crazy herald that has kind of just lost his mind, and he's only has a few sane moments, and I just don't know what's going to happen with that. So I guess we shall see. There were a few moments in there where I was really kind of on the edge of my seat with some of the things Dalinar did. Like, an example is the way he really pushed so hard on the limits of the Stormfather. And I realize he's trying to get him to grow, but that kind of felt uncomfortable to me. It was almost like, he was pushing too much. And maybe not. Maybe that's just me, but I felt like he was just kind of overstepping. It ended up working out in the end, and it ended up being a good thing that he did it. But it still kind of made me uncomfortable. I mean, that's, he was really pushing the limits there. So it was interesting to see those few moments with him. So, and maybe I missed something, and if I did, feel free to bring it up to me and say, well, what about this? And I'm like, oh yeah, I remember that. Let's talk about that in the comments if you think of something that I should have brought up. And I'm not going to touch on everything in this review, of course. So let's talk about some WTF moments for me, and then I'm going to end with some of the little snippets from the Cosmere that pop up in Rhythm of War. So I'll quickly go through the WTF moments. The first major one for me was Taravangian. I was not at all happy with how things turned out. And maybe some of you were, and that's fine. But it got right down to the end, and Zeth went forward to kill Taravangian, and I thought, okay, we're finally going to get rid of this guy. This guy annoys me to no end. And so when he's dying, he finally manages to grab Nightblood and kill Reyes, who was the embodiment for Odium. And then Odium's soul was vacant and open for Taravangian to become the new Odium. I was like, wait, you mean we're going to be stuck with this guy forever? And I mean, this guy is a brilliant mind. I'll give him that. So he's going to add a whole other layer to Odium. But I was just like, I do not like this guy. Now we're stuck with him. I mean, I wish Zeth had just finished the job. I mean, honestly. And maybe that sounds kind of morbid and cruel that I wanted him to die. But I really did. I'm like, just get this character out of there. But it makes sense, I think, for the story. It puts a new twist on things for sure. Yeah. Another WTF moment for me was Moash. And I told you before I'd get to Moash. And so now we're going to talk about Moash. What the actual hell, dude. This guy, I just could not believe how far he had fallen. Like, from... He keeps talking about being Kaladin's friend, but he obviously does not care about Kaladin at all. It's all about him, and it's all about his pain, and he only serves Odium because Odium, quote unquote, took away his pain, and now he doesn't have to feel anything, and he can just go about serving the one who took away his pain. I'm like, dude, you're such a despicable human being. There were so many times where I was just like, I'm gonna strangle this guy. I'm gonna just, I get my hands on him, and I'm gonna... But, and I mean, of course he'd kill me because he's just this overpowered guy. But Especially when he killed Taft. I was like, no, you killed Taft. I'm gonna strangle this guy. I just, oh my god, I was so frustrated with Moash, and maybe he'll get a redemption arc at some point. I don't know, but I almost feel like he's beyond redemption at this point. I just, I'm sure he's not, but I'm like, dude, this guy is just so despicable with killing Elokar in the last book, and now Teft, and now he's out to kill Kaladin and everybody that Kaladin cares about, and it's just, oh my god, I was just floored. Moash was pissing me off to no end. So yeah, I know. And right at the end there, when Kaladin realized that he had killed Taft, I mean, Kaladin was livid. I mean, you could just see how tortured he was over that. So I really felt bad for him. I was like, oh my gosh, Kaladin. But Moash kind of got what was coming to him a little bit. He's blind now, I guess, and he got injured in the battle. I don't think he's dead, but maybe he is. But it seemed like he was still alive. He's just blind now. But yeah, that was kind of a weird moment for me. And then, kind of along the lines of Moash, because he had that green bird. And that brings me to another one. What the heck was up with the chicken? I'm like, I mean, obviously, okay, it's Lift. I know it's Lift. She's just strange to begin with. She's just one of these weird off the wall characters that I just don't really care that much for, but I guess she's kind of funny at times, and she's always wanting to be awesome. And it was kind of neat to learn that she was given the power of cultivation, so to speak, like a totally different way to use Stormlight, a way to create Stormlight. So I thought that was kind of cool. But overall, I still just kind of end up being annoyed by her. And then the whole thing with the chicken, and now she's carrying the chicken around. Well, what is this obsession with the chicken? Okay, just weird tangent. Please forgive me. And then the pursuer, the fuse that was after Kaladin and wanted to just destroy him. And each time Kaladin killed him, he came back even more furious. I mean, this guy was obviously short at least 3/4 of his marbles. I mean, this guy is just absolutely ludicrous. And I just, I'm just like, dude, you need to calm down a little bit. I mean, he was just on a rampage. But it ended up biting him in the butt at the end, right? Because, I mean, he just obviously wasn't thinking clearly or thinking calmly and rationally. He was so irrational that it ended up being his downfall and demise at the end. So that was good. But I was like, that throughout the whole book, even right at the beginning when Kaladin first encountered him, I was like, okay, dude, this guy needs to take a chill pill. Yeah, you heard me right. He needs to take a chill pill. So Kaladin gave him his chill pill, a permanent chill pill. And who knows, maybe he'll get revived in other books. Odium will probably figure out some way to bring him back. I don't know. And then Wit. I love that we got so much time with Wit in this book. And it was really kind of interesting to learn about him. I mean, he obviously is a world hopper, and he takes on all the different magic systems of the different world that he goes to. Like, he becomes bonded to a Spren in this world, and now he has the powers of a light weaver, and that was kind of cool. I just really enjoyed seeing more interaction with Wit in the book. One thing that was kind of weird was the relationship between Wit and Yasna. It's obviously just a physical relationship, meeting their physical needs, because Yasna, for one, does not strike me as the romantic type. So, it's all in her head. She's all about intellectual reasoning and study and making battle plans and stuff, and she probably only has the time for the occasional fling with wit and then back to business, right? She's all business, and I just thought that was kind of an interesting thing, and I thought it was funny how Brandon kind of beat around the bush with that. He never really came right out and said that they were having a sexual relationship, but the things he did say, it was pretty obvious. So it, those are times when I'm just like, just come out and say it. This is a book for adults, right? Come on. But I thought that was kind of funny. So I think that's all the WTF moments that I had. Let me see. I don't think there's any more, and maybe were some that you had that you are wanting to talk about. Make sure to talk with me in the comments. And if you have other questions about the book, about things that you weren't sure about, feel free to ask them. I'd love to talk about that in the comments. Let's move on to some of the Cosmere connections, and then we need to end this because this is getting kind of long in the teeth. I don't want to keep you guys too long, but I know you're enjoying this. So let's talk about the Cosmere. And what I was really impressed with is this book actually mentioned the Cosmere a lot. I was shocked. I thought we probably wouldn't really get much information about the Cosmere until maybe the second arc of the Stormlight Archive, when it starts with book 6. But no, we're getting quite a lot already, and just little tidbits and Easter eggs here and there. So let's talk about those. The first one that I thought was really cool was finding out that the spren that's inside the communication cube that Mraize had given to Shallan is actually a Scion. And if you're not familiar with other books in the Cosmere like Elantris, you may not know what the Scions are. And it's not really a spoiler. I'm not gonna go into spoilers about Elantris, but the Scions are from Elantris. They're from that world, and so it's kind of curious to see them pop up, because I guess they are a kind of spren, and you can, who knows, maybe they can even be forged into a blade of sorts. It's hard to say, but apparently they were the heart of this communication box. So we've got the Scions, and you've got the interesting tidbits with using metals to alter fabrials, to alter the way that the spren work in the fabrials. And I thought that was really interesting, especially all the little chapter headings where Navani was giving her speeches and instructions on creating fabrials. And the more they learned about it, they realized that it's affected by metals. And I was instantly reminded of Mistborn, because obviously Mistborn, the whole system is based around using different metals together and combining them for different effects. And so now that's a thing in the Stormlight Archive as well. So that was kind of cool. And then there was also the brief mention by Odium of other races discovering the surges. And so currently Rashar is the only place that can use the surges. But it seems like there may eventually be other worlds in the Cosmere that will discover and be able to use the surges. Who knows? I guess we'll have to see what happens there. There's some speculation about a few things. Number one is apparently the chicken and the green bird may be invested animals. So they may be invested with powers from Adonalsium. They may be from a different world. I'm not entirely sure on that, so don't quote me. Let me know in the comments if you know exactly what I'm talking about, because I'm really not sure. There's apparently some of the comments that were at the beginning of some of the other chapters were actually quotes from letters from Sazed, who is now called Harmony, and he's from the Mistborn books. So that was kind of cool. I didn't realize that connection until somebody else brought it up. And then apparently, based on comments that Whip made right at the very end when he was listening in on the conversation between Shallan and Mraize through the communication cube, he was trying to tell Mraize to let Thadakar, who is the leader of the Ghostbloods, to let him know that he doesn't want to have to come and slap him around again, and he called him the Lord of Scars. And so apparently there's a rumor floating around that because of that comment, especially the whole Lord of Scars thing, that's actually referring to Kelsier from the Mistborn books. Now that's not confirmed. It's not confirmed at all. It's a good possibility, maybe, but it's not confirmed, especially because I think he's stuck in the cognitive realm right now. I don't know a whole lot because I have not read Mistborn's Secret History yet, so stay tuned for more on that as I delve more into these topics. But just so you know, that's not confirmed, but it is a pretty popular rumor that's floating around out there that Kelsier is actually Thadakar, the leader of the Ghostbloods. There were some other little tidbits. We learned that Mraize has some sand, some white sand from the White Sand books. He has a lock of hair from, I don't remember whose hair it is or if it's really said, but that would be from Warbreaker. So he's got little artifacts, if you will, from all over the Cosmere. So it seems pretty clear that the Ghostbloods are actually world hoppers, or at least Mraize is, and we know that probably Thadakar is as well. So it's pretty cool to see all of these things. One other tidbit that I thought of when I heard the rumor of Kelsier being Thadakar was that maybe he's a Khandra, because Brandon has confirmed that there are Khandra, or at least one Khandra, in the Stormlight Archive. The Khandra were beings from Scadrial from the Mistborn series. He's confirmed that there is a Khandra on the world of Roshar, but he hasn't said who it is or given really any hints. And so, maybe Thadakar is actually the Khandra. We don't know, and we probably won't find out for a while. But I thought that was cool. And I think that about wraps it up. I've gone on really long, guys. Let me know what you thought about some of these things in the comments. Let me know some of the things that you think I missed that I should have talked about, and point those out to me in the comments. I am wholeheartedly on board with knowing those things. And most importantly, make sure that you are checking out all this stuff here. Help me support my channel by liking and subscribing and stuff. If you want to see my spoiler-free review for Dawnshard and Rhythm of War, I will leave the link in the description below, and also the link to my spoiler-filled review for Dawnshard. That will be in the description below as well. So check those out if you want to be up to date on those. And most importantly, guys, make sure that you're reading more books. I'll talk to you in my next video. Have a great one. Bye.